Welcome to the Smart Business Show, episode 149. Today I'm going to talk to Mark Schinnerer, not Schinnerer, like I say in the podcast with him, about his new book, The Success Grower. So I know Mark. I know Mark from the Read to Lead book club. There'll be a link for this in the show note if you want to join us, and we talk about it in the interview as well. Now, I haven't actually interviewed an author before, and I really wanted to interview Mark first because I know him, and I've had a chance to talk to him a few times about many things, right? About a number of different things, but also this book. You've heard a lot of his 8 elements, which he goes over in the podcast in a minute, that are in the Success Grower. You've heard that in lots of different books. You've heard it lots of times. I like how he threads a story through it, so it's not a typical business book. He as he says, he tried to write that 3 years ago, but it was not what he wanted. So he threads a story of a gentleman who was a tough time, and then he meets a farmer, and starts to turn his life around and starts to make some better choices. I think that putting these principles in a story, a lot of these principles in the story, it's good because you're gonna stick through it. You're gonna sit down and say, "Oh, I remember listening to the story, and this is what happened, and I need to change how I'm reacting in here." And then we talk a little bit about his 8 elements, and then bring up 3 quotes out of the elements. How to weather storms, how do you keep your mind open to new ideas, and how to measure your day-to-day success, and how to remember to do that instead of always looking at the dream you have, but how to measure each step you take and be happy in that. So without further ado, here's going to be Mark Schinnerer. Schinnerer. I did it again. Schinnerer. Mark Schinnerer. I said without further ado, but I'd love if you would favorite the episode, if you're an Overcast or stars or reviews, iTunes or Stitcher or anything. That helps me get known more, or share the episode with the people you know. So here is Mark for real this time on the Smart Business Show, episode 149 for January 12th. All right, so today we're talking to Mark Schinnerer. Schinnerer? Oh, I said it wrong after even correcting me.
Oh, you did it. Oh, man.
Didn't know. So, Mark Schinnerer, like your shin. And we actually met on the Read to Lead podcast group, the book club, which we're both members of, right?
Right.
So why don't you introduce yourself a little more?
Okay. Well, I'm Mark Schinnerer. I'm actually employed by a nonprofit organization that works with special needs adults. Mm-hmm. And I'm the CEO of this organization and have been doing that for over 10 years. But we're going to talk about the book today. Mm-hmm. And the book is called The Success Grower. And some people are like, where did you come up with the title, The Success Grower? And I said, well, I grew up on a farm and I'm an avid gardener. And the concepts in the book come from that. And so I kind of came up with that title. The book was a long time in coming. I came up with the idea for the book back in, I don't even know the year. It's like 9 years ago now, since we're in 2018. So that'd be 09, I guess. And I had a concept of taking ideas and concepts from farming and gardening and growing things and putting it together with the concepts that I was learning from my own personal growth and development journey that I've been on since 1981 after I got out of college, and all the things that I've done to grow myself, to work on myself, the books I've read and the people I've met and just the things I've done in my life. And I just had this idea about a book that took those concepts from farming and put them together. And so I wrote them down on a piece of paper. And they were kind of like ideas and concepts, maybe you would say chapters, and they kind of ended up being the 8 elements that are now in the book. And over time, I'd then maybe write down some ideas of farming concepts or gardening concepts that would go to each one, or ideas of personal growth and development that fit with each one. And I hung onto this paper for 8 years. And I'd put it in a drawer and I'd forget what drawer I put it in. And it's like, oh crap, where's that paper? and I'd dig and I'd find it. And then I'd go move it to another shelf or put it in a book or put it in another drawer. And a few years later, it's like, oh shoot, where did I put that? I got to add to it. And I'd find it and I carried it around. Finally, probably about 3-4 years ago, I actually put that in my iPad. So at least it's now in electronic format because I carry that with me all the time. So it's like, okay, I know where that is. I then decided, I tried to write it now 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to write it like your typical nonfiction, self-help, personal development book. And I wrote a few chapters, probably portions of chapters, trying to get some of these concepts written down. And I hated it. It sounded like all the books I've ever read that were on my shelf that I could go pull off my shelf and read. And I just didn't like it.
How did you what did that do for your creative process when you realized you didn't like what you were doing? Were you discouraged, or did you just say, well, it's not ready yet?
I think initially a little discouraged and just frustrated because I was trying to get this done because I was at a point where I wanted to do it. But I just let it go because it just seemed like it was not the right thing. That was at the first of that year, 3 years ago. At the end of the year, I was driving home from Nebraska with my son, who was 26 or 7 at the time. After Christmas, we were coming home from family. And I told him about the book. And I said, I want to write a book. He said, what do you want to write a book about? So I explained that book to him, the typical nonfiction, and here's the principles and here's the concepts, because he understood the farm, going back and visiting the grandparents on the farm. And when I got done explaining the book, I said to him, would you read that book? And he just kind of laughed. He said, no, I wouldn't read that book. That sounds boring.
And that was the more traditional.
That was the more traditional nonfiction type book.
Yeah.
And I had been talking to some people about the book and another concept. And I said, I have another idea. I said, what if it's a story of a guy that is in college, his junior year, he's about to finish his junior year, and he doesn't know what he wants to do with his degree in his life. So he's got 3 months off in the summer to kind of go figure it out before his senior year. He heads off across the country. He meets up with a farmer who he spends the summer with, and this farmer teaches him these elements of success or achieving your goals based on what he does as a farmer. In order to be a farmer for very long, you have to understand how to do things in certain ways to plan and prepare and make sure you have good soil and those kinds of things to grow a crop to at least survive. And so he learned these things and he put them into place, and this farmer gave him these tools and these elements, these concepts, and he goes back and finishes his senior year and takes off in his life and becomes successful. My son said, yeah, I'd read that book. I said, okay, cool. Well, the book isn't quite that book. It's got a lot of similarities to it. The story's a little bit different.
Yep.
Probably the biggest thing is most people can't relate to 3 months off in the summer unless you're a college student or a teacher. So it's a story about a guy who works in business and industry. He's a marketing professional. And because of issues and frustrations at work, he takes his 2 weeks vacation and heads off across the country. And
it's not even 2 weeks vacation. It's kind of enforced vacation, right?
It's, he pushed it into happening. In the book, he basically said, I don't agree. I'm upset. I'm frustrated. I have 2 weeks. I'm gone. And imagine that his supervisor said, I think you need to take your 2 weeks, and that would be a good thing. And then purely by accident, he ends up with this farmer who teaches him these elements of success. And you might think, well, how does a farmer even know this stuff? And so in the book, and you have to read the book to find out how the farmer knows this. He has his own history of success that you have to find out in the book, which, gives him the credibility to teach people what he knows. And why we should listen to Tom, the farmer.
Yeah. So you said there are 8 elements. Can you give us a short one-liner on each one?
Yeah, I can just give you the topic and maybe just briefly kind of what it is. The first one's called fertile soil, fertile mind. And what that means is just like you have to have fertile soil to grow anything in a field, on a farm, in a garden, you have to have a fertile mind to take the ideas that you have in your mind to grow a new project, a new business, whatever it is you want to do. You know, if you've got goals or dreams, you got to have a fertile mind. And the way you do that is you got to believe in yourself. You got to make sure you're putting good information in your mind and making sure it's prepared to grow what you're doing. The second one is called focus on the harvest.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you start looking down the road. You take the dream that you have and you see that your dream is a good dream that you want to follow. You write it down. You look at it every day. You start focusing your mind and your attention towards the end of that goal. The third one is called plant seeds for a bountiful harvest. In that one, then it further gets into taking the ideas, putting good ideas in your mind, developing good, strong habits of reading, studying, maybe it's exercising because your goal is to become healthier. Mm-hmm. Start creating these good habits, creating good thoughts. We beat ourselves up so badly by how we think. And so start creating good thoughts. And what are the steps you need to take to get toward that harvest? So you're planting these seeds to getting ready to get to the harvest. The fourth one is called water and fertilize for healthy growth. Just like if you're growing flowers or a garden or anything, you have to water it. You probably need some fertilizer along the way so it grows healthy and strong. Those are the resources. Those are the things we pull into our life. Those are the people we associate with. Those are the books that we read. Those are the workshops and seminars we might attend to gain knowledge, to gain insight, to gain, maybe to learn some new skills. So to me, watering and fertilizing our own self is what are we putting in and what are we bringing into our life so that we become a better person. Mm-hmm. The fifth one is cultivate your mind and plans. So that's now where you take all of this, your dreams and goals that you've got, and you've got the resources that you're bringing into yourself and into your mind. And now you start growing those and you start nurturing this process to create a plan and to grow this plan. You start focusing on the goals that you're going to set along the way. So if your ideal dream is to make $200,000 a year and you've got this really nice house, but today you only make $25,000 a year, you can't go from 25 to 200,000 overnight. What's the plan? What's the step? How are you going to get there? What do you have to do in 6 months to be, let's say you want to do it in a year. Where do you have to be in 6 months to be halfway there? Okay. Where do you have to be in 3 months to be a fourth of the way? What do you do today to start on that step? So you start focusing on those goals and learning what you need to do along the way to get there. The next one is called storms. I kind of like that one. I kind of like storms. In the book, I say storms are inevitable. They happen in our lives. We can't get past them. Sometimes they just show up. Sometimes it's the storms that other people bring into our life. It's the way we're treated. It's the way people respond to us. It's the environment we live in. A lot of times they just happen. But the important thing is to know that there are things that are going to come up that are going to stop you, that are going to waylay you on your journey. And what I find usually happens to me is when I've set a goal to achieve something, all of a sudden another opportunity pops up just like that. And I'm the kind of person that loves to say yes. I love to help people. I love to help make them successful and succeed. And that's the purpose of the book. And so if somebody asks me to be on a committee or to help with this project, my first inclination is to say, absolutely, I'll do that because I've done it all my life. But if I'm right at the beginning of setting a new goal, I've noticed that this is happening a lot now when I set a new goal. And so to me, that's the storm that pops up. Or as I talk about in the book, that's the weeds that pop up in our life. Some of the weeds that come up in our life are what we say to ourselves, the weeds that we plant, what we say to ourselves, how we talk, what our belief system is. Some of those are weeds that other people plant in our lives, and that's what they say to us. They say, oh, you can't do that. You can't be successful. Or they try and take their lack of achievement and putting it on us. So for the storms and the weeds that come up in life, you have to have a plan. You may not know exactly what they are, but you have to know that these things are going to happen and how you're going to respond when they do to stay focused on the goal. The next one is harvest. Harvest is a great time. Always loved harvest on the farm. Nice thing about a garden is you harvest a lot all the time, and it's just really exciting. But harvest on a farm is a great time. It's a sense of accomplishment. It's a time to celebrate, but it's also a time to reflect where you've been and to ask yourself, what's next? Because most of our goals that we set in our life aren't end of life goals. They're next year goals. They're next week goals. Well, that's fine. If you accomplish it, what's the next one? Hopefully you've already set the next one. And so like a farmer, he's got this field that's growing, this crop that's growing, and he's aiming for a harvest. He's only got a few month window between planting and harvest, but he's already planted the next one. So when he gets to harvest, he's already got another crop growing for the next harvest. So he's always continually setting a goal to keep moving forward. And that's what Harvest in the book is all about. Celebrate the accomplishments, aim for the accomplishment, but plan for the next one. In the end, the last one is mentor and mastermind. That's making sure you have people in your mind who you trust, who can guide you on your journey, because we shouldn't do it alone. We should find somebody who either has been there before us or somebody who's several steps ahead of us, who know the pitfalls in the road, because it's a whole lot easier to learn from somebody else what doesn't work and avoid it than have to go through it yourself, because that's crazy if somebody else has been there. So find those mentors who can guide you along the way. Mastermind groups have really gained popularity in the last several years. Benjamin Franklin actually started one way back whenever. He called it the Junto way back.
That's right.
Way back in the day. And
there's the Inklings as well, which is what C.S. Lewis and Tolkien.
Right. Right. So masterminds are valuable because it's a group of people coming together who are working on specific issues but supporting each other on their own issues. So it's a closed group. It's a group typically where you hold each other accountable, but there's a lot of trust involved. And you can get very, very, very personal in those settings a lot. So, that's kind of the 8 elements in the book.
Well, so I'd like to pull out a few quotes here that I'd love to go a little deeper on.
Okay.
So the first one is, if you're not continually preparing your mind to accept new information and ideas, you'll just become an old dried up field full of weeds. So how do you advise people really prepare their minds? Are you advising they read books, or what are the actual activities that they can use to keep their minds prepared and open, right? I think another thing we often fall into is that the other side is dumb. Whoever doesn't hold our opinion, it must not be smart.
And that's hard. That's hard. And especially in today's society where, at least in this country here, where we are so polar opposite today.
I as a Canadian, I don't even get it sometimes. When I see some of the things, I'm like, it just doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. And, the attitude is, if you don't agree with me, you're wrong and you should die.
Yeah.
That's kind of the attitude. And it doesn't matter which side. Both sides basically feel the same way, which is really sad. And so it gets hard sometimes in kind of this now culture to say to yourself, I'm going to read, or I'm going to listen to or understand a differing opinion than what I hold myself, because I want to learn. That's hard. We should do it. I don't do it well. I'll just admit to it. I don't do it well. I usually read what I'm interested in for me. So I have to force myself sometimes, and sometimes I hate what I read.
One of the reasons I joined the Read to Lead book club was because I would not be choosing the books specifically, so that I had someone else making some choices for me.
I got that. Yeah. This last year, I probably wouldn't have chosen some of those books. Some of them were hard. I thought they were hard. But, for me, and I can only give you my experience reading, I read a lot. I don't read as much as you read. I read 31 books this last year. That's the most I've ever read. And I think you're 80 some, but
something like that.
For me, that's a lot. I read one book this week. I finished it to this morning, it's like, it's only the 5th of January and I've read a book already.
My January book is like a tome plus the retweet one. So I'll get 1, maybe 2 done this month.
Yeah. The other thing that, for me today is podcasts. It's like reading a book. You can carry a book around and read it. With podcast, and because of our smartphones, you have all of this knowledge and information at the touch of a button. And anytime you want to listen to it, you can, whether you're driving or you're working out or whatever it might be, I've got a podcast going, and I have learned so much in that fashion from people who are really, really smart.
Yep.
And that, to me, it's a great way to learn. And you can listen to people who you don't agree with. And, fortunately you can yell at them and they can't hear you. So
yeah, when I'm out on the trails, people would look funny at me though. At least on some of the more popular ones. That's why I said some of my episodes of the podcast are on a mountain, because I'm listening to something and I'm like, oh, I've got some ideas. And I just turn my phone around and start recording a podcast while I'm going to do something.
Yeah. Some of the other things are just, the people you associate with, don't associate with negative people. Oh my gosh. They can just, if you've got a goal and you want to do something new and aspire to something, and you're always associating with people who are negative and cutting down ideas, it's frustrating. And, they may be your best friend, but if they are, you might have to decide if it's a really good, healthy relationship. So
I just listened to the Tim Ferriss podcast with, I want to say the Old Spice guy, but he's a football player and an actor and a bunch of other things. And he talks a lot about how to cut off those relationships. I'll put that link in the show notes for those who are interested.
Yeah, cool.
My clacky loud keyboard as I make a note for that. So the other quote I had out here was, success isn't measured in the end result. It's measured in the little progress you make every day and the course changes or corrections you make when faced with an obstacle. So how do you determine which course corrections need to be made?
It's not easy. It's obviously going to be very, very individualized. And I think it's something that you have to force yourself to plan for, because we can get so ingrained into the direction we're headed, and we think this is a great goal that I want to go for. And, you may bump up against obstacles, just like, I know I can make this happen. I know I can. And, it's like buying money, buying a stock that goes down, and you, instead of getting out of it, you say, oh, it's cheaper, I'll buy some more. Oh, it's cheaper.
Cost fallacy.
Yeah.
I was just talking to a client this morning who has a bunch of very pretty looking brochures, but when we went through all the ideal clients and held up this brochure, for none of them was it the right brochure. And she's like, but they're right there in their money. I'm like, but they're waste. The money's already gone. You can't change that. Are they useful?
Right. Yeah.
The kids could color on them.
I think it's the same way with the direction of our plans and our goals. We get so caught up in that's what we want that it's hard for us sometimes to see that that's not the right direction. That's why the mentor is really helpful a lot of times to help see that, we're really kind of going off on a tangent down the wrong road, and just small corrections sometimes just make the whole difference. It doesn't have to be 180-degree change direction. Sometimes it's just a little tweak. If you think about an airplane, when an airplane takes off, and I was reading this a couple of days ago, I think 90% of the whole air flight of an airplane is off course.
Yeah.
And they know that because they know at the end, because of wind and other things, that eventually they will end up where they need to be. But they're always making a course correction depending on what the wind is doing. Their altitude is always being corrected. And so it's never a straight shot. If you plan to take a trip and you plug it into the map on your phone and you've got the destination, if you actually look at the directions, there are tons of small course corrections because of a corner or an obstacle that you've got to go around. It's never a straight shot. If we understand that trying to get to our goals is never a straight line, there's always these little corrections, then we can see them as they come up, and hopefully we can see them and make those course corrections along the way.
So do you plan time into your weeks or months to look for what course corrections need to be made?
Not enough.
So yes, I should, Curtis. Yes, I should.
Yes, I should.
Fair
And
enough.
like I was talking to somebody recently about an issue, and they looked at me and they said, "Mark, go read your book." I said, "Oh, thank you. I needed that."
In my coaching, I've said things to a client and then jumped into my mastermind group, and they literally almost word for word said what I just said to a client. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I should do this. We all need it for sure.
Yeah. So maybe that just tells me that the book is really good stuff. I don't know.
It is really good stuff. I much enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to digging back into it as I write my review. In a week or two, I'll actually dig into that. So on the other quote I had here, as in all things, a choice will be required of you. Will you choose to let the storm destroy your life and plans, or will you choose to build a shelter from the storm and pick up after it is over to keep moving forward? The only way to weather a storm is to go through it. This is out of element 6, right? Which you said was one of your favorites, the storms. So
right.
In the midst of those storms, how do you choose? Like, what does it take to keep going? Like, part of it comes back to grit, which
it comes back to grit. I think I read a book.
We read that this year, didn't we, together?
Yeah.
I know I read it again this year.
Yeah. It comes down to grit. It comes down to just staying focused on what your goal is. Those are hard, especially if it happens to be relationship based. When it's relationship based, it's very, very hard because then we get really, really emotional about our position a lot of times. I think my point really in the book is to not just let life happen to you. So many times most of us, we live our life based on what's going on today and what we're confronted with today, and it changes our course today. We don't think about tomorrow. We only think about what's going on today, and we never really plan. I get to say it here because this is like my speech when I talk about this concept. We teach you how to read. We teach you how to write. We teach you how to drive a car. We teach you how to get a job. But who teaches you how to set goals and achieve success in your life? We don't teach that. It's not taught in school. It's not taught in families. We don't teach it. We just assume you can learn how to succeed in life by just following the plan that we've always had.
Yep.
Well, I'm a baby boomer, and the plan that I grew up with in the beginning of my career does not exist anymore. It used to be get a job, work for 40 years, take your retirement, and enjoy life. That doesn't exist.
Nope.
And if you don't have a plan, you're going to end up in a bad place at the end of your life with bad health, no money, and just, not good outcomes where you thought you wanted to be at the end of your life. Yeah. So the point of the book is don't let that happen. You can plan your life. You can plan for success in your life, and it's up to you to do it. And it's not easy. It is not easy, but you can do it. Many, many people do because they learn it on their own. I'm just trying to offer a concept that let's don't learn it on our own. Let's find some help to do this. And that's kind of like my mission with the book is to help people understand what this process is and understand how they can create a plan. I can't write the plan for you. I can't tell you where you're going. I can't come up with your goals. But I can hopefully be Tom in the book. I can be that guide and that mentor to help you walk down the road to see how to put it together and ask the questions that maybe you need to have an answer for to put your plan together. I can't do it for you, but at least I can act as a guide to help get you down the road.
Cool. Thank you. Where can people get a hold of you for more? I'll put some links to where you can buy the book on Amazon. Where else can people find you?
Yeah, the book's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. There is a website called thesuccessgrower.com for the book, and it's got all my contact in there. I do some coaching, and I have some coaching opportunities and speaking and workshops, things like that if people are interested in. Go there on the website, send me an email or a contact, and we can chat about what you're interested in, how we can maybe work together.
So you can also find both of us in the Read to Lead book club, which I'll put a link in the show notes. I think it's open right now as well.
Yeah, I think he's got it open right now. And if you ever want to get into a reading book club. This one's awesome. Jeff's done a great.
It's really good.
This one's awesome.
I looked at a few, and this is the one I stuck with.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you get to meet folks like Curtis. So I'm just saying.
I don't always put a collared shirt on, though. Sometimes I have the baby on my knee.
Sometimes you do. That's right.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us today, Mark. I'm looking forward to writing my review, and going back through all the elements again.
I'll be looking forward to reading your review. Thanks.
Cool. So I'll chop it somewhere there. Was there any other questions you have for me?
I don't think so.
Okay. You getting on some other podcasts too?
I was actually on one yesterday.
Awesome.
Another guy who heard Jeff's podcast. He's in Seattle. It's the Better Every Day podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard of it.
Interesting guy. He has a thing where he talks about what music you're interested in, and that's at the end. And so we talked about music, and in the background, then he'll play whatever music I'm interested in the background at the end of the podcast, which is kind of cool. So
cool. I'd have to say, he asked me, what music do you listen to most? My Little Pony and the Trolls soundtrack. That's what my daughter's. It's actually pretty good for running.
But the question is, can you sing the song?
I can sing a lot of the songs, yes.
Would be my guess, yeah.
I've taught my kids, there's one called Hair Up, where that's kind of got a good beat to it. And so I get my 3-year-old and the baby just rock their heads back and forth. The whole car, all three of us will be going like that. My 7-year-old will be like, Dad. So, yeah. Cool. Well, we'll see. I guess we're in a couple of weeks, right? I got to